Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Uncovered podcast. I'm Peter, and today we're diving into a topic that affects us all, our daily routine. In this episode, I'll help you improve your English through real, everyday vocabulary. We'll explore verbs, expressions, and practical tips that will make your routine descriptions sound more natural and alive. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from. I love reading your comments, and in future episodes, I'll be giving shout-outs to some of you. Also, stay until the end because I have some interactive exercises and personal stories to share with you. So, let's begin with some key verbs for your morning routine. The first one is wake up. Instead of just saying get up, you can say I wake up at 6:30 every morning. And after you wake up, you might add I get up immediately to emphasize action. Then I usually say I make myself a cup of coffee or I prepare breakfast. Another great phrase is freshen up. For example, I freshen up before heading out. When it's time to travel to work, you might say, I commute to work by bus, or I drive to work. You can also say, I head to the office, or I go to work. Now, think about your own morning. What time do you wake up? What's the very first thing you do? Take a moment to imagine your routine and try to connect these phrases with your life. Moving on to midday routines, work or study. For example, I might say, I work in marketing. If you're a student, you could say, I study engineering, or I attend classes. At lunchtime, I often say, I have lunch at noon, or I grab lunch with colleagues. Notice that grab lunch sounds casual and is perfect for quick meals. Don't forget to mention breaks. For example, I take a short break to relax and catch up on reading. And in professional contexts, you can use I attend meetings throughout the day. Now let's move to afternoon routines. Finishing work, for instance, I finish work at 5 p.m. Or you can say, I wrap up for the day. It sounds more dynamic. Talking about exercise, you might say, I hit the gym, or I go for a run. When you need to do tasks outside work, you can use, I run errands like grocery shopping. Then comes dinner time. I cook dinner at home, or I prepare a meal. For relaxation, I often say, I unwind by reading a book, or I watch TV. And to close the day, I go to bed around 10 p.m. Now, that's a great overview of a daily routine. But to make your descriptions more engaging, you should add descriptive details. For example, I savor a freshly brewed cup of strong coffee, or I enjoy the quiet of the early morning, peaceful and refreshing. During work, you could say, I had a busy and productive morning, followed by an energizing workout after the office. And for your evenings, you might describe them as calm and serene. Using adjectives transforms your routine into a vivid story that people can picture in their minds. One of the best strategies I use for practice is having conversations even with myself. Sometimes I record my own voice or imagine I'm talking to a friend. This really helps improve fluency and confidence. That's helpful. Now I have an interactive exercise for you. I want you to draft a short narrative about your daily routine. Start with, Every morning I wake up to, and be sure to include some adjectives. For instance, every morning I wake up to the soft glow of sunrise and stretch. If you can jot down a few lines or even say it out loud, that's great practice. While you're visualizing, let's move on to some tips and tricks. Use time markers like in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. Connect actions with connectors. Then, after that, next, and finally. For example, I wake up, then I freshen up, and after that, I head to work. Also, add personal touches. For instance, I love my morning run because it energizes me. And try to vary sentence structures. Mix short and complex sentences. Another tip is to practice with a friend or record yourself describing your routine. It's fun, and you get feedback to improve. Let me share a personal story about how my routine changed. A few years ago, I realized my mornings were robotic. Wake, coffee, rush. That probably sounds familiar. So I started keeping a diary of my activities in English. I wrote about how I felt and the little moments, like the aroma of coffee. It was wonderful. This simple habit made me more mindful and at the same time improved my English. My routine became more than just actions. It became a story with ups and downs. And when I talked about it, it sparked great conversations. Friends would ask me, "Why do you start the day with a walk?" They were curious about my story, not just the actions. Now, let's put everything together with a sample narrative. Every morning, I wake up at 6:30 a.m. to the gentle sound of my alarm. The soft morning light peeks through the curtains, and I take a few moments to stretch. After I freshen up, I make a delicious cup of coffee and sit by my window. I plan my day while enjoying the calm before the hustle. By 7:30 a.m., I head to work, driving through busy city streets. My workday is filled with meetings, emails, and brainstorming sessions. At noon, I take a break at a nearby cafe for a healthy lunch. In the afternoon, I wrap up my tasks and run errands if needed. Evenings are for cooking dinner and experimenting with new recipes. Then I unwind by reading or watching a show. Finally, I wind down around 10 p.m., reflecting on the day's events. That sample shows how to structure your narrative. Before we wrap up this section, remember to practice regularly. Record yourself or share your story with a friend. I'd love to hear about your routines, so drop a comment below. Tell me what you do, how you feel, and the new vocabulary you're using. Who knows? Your story might even inspire a future episode. Now, let's dive into weekend routines and how they differ. On weekends, you might say, "I sleep in," to express a later wake-up time. Or you could say, "I catch up on sleep," if you had a busy week. For leisure, you can use, "I hang out with friends," or "I meet up with family." And for hobbies, "I pursue my interests, like painting or playing music." We can also talk about chores. For example, "I do laundry," or "I clean the house." And "I tidy up my workspace" is great for professionals. Now, let's compare the simple present and the present continuous. We use the simple present for routines. For example, "I read the news every morning." And we use the present continuous for temporary actions. For instance, "I'm reading a novel this week." Notice the nuance. It adds variety to your descriptions. Let's practice together. Which sentence describes your routine right now? Think, Do you read the news regularly? Or are you reading something specific this week? Next, let's look at some common expressions with get. For example, I get dressed, I get home, I get ready. And also phrasal verbs, I drop off the kids, or I pick up groceries. These phrasal verbs are essential for natural speech. Now, let's add some interactive learning. Fill in the blank. I blank wake up at 7 a.m. I blank make breakfast, and I head to work. Pause for a moment and say the full sentences aloud, using the verbs and connectors we've learned. That's great practice for your speaking skills. Now, let's talk about expressions for feelings. For example, I feel energized after my run, or I feel relaxed when I listen to music. Use these phrases to describe your mood throughout the day. How about asking questions? They're great for conversations. For example, what time do you usually wake up? Do you take a lunch break at noon or later? How do you unwind in the evening? These kinds of questions make your conversations much more engaging. As for me, I have a morning habit that's unique. I always journal for 5 minutes right after coffee. It's a fantastic habit and also a great way to practice English writing. It adds both reflection and language learning to my routine. Now, let's cover some idiomatic expressions related to routine. For example, I'm an early bird if you love mornings, or I'm a night owl if you prefer late nights. And I run on coffee is a fun way to express your dependence on caffeine. Let's practice an idiom together. Try this pattern. I always blank on blank. For example, I always run on coffee in the morning. Now fill it in with your own habit and share it in the comments. Next, let's look at how to handle unexpected changes in routine. You can use phrases like, I had to reschedule, or my plans changed, or I ended up working late if something unexpected came up. These phrases show that you're flexible and real. Now, let's talk about time expressions beyond just markers. Words like occasionally, rarely, often, and usually. For example, I occasionally treat myself to brunch on weekends, or I usually finish work by 6 p.m. And when it comes to intensity, you can say, I absolutely love my evening walk, or I hardly ever skip my morning workout. These are wonderful variations that bring your routine descriptions to life.
Let's introduce some transitional phrases for storytelling. Phrases like one day, after that, from that moment on. They make your narrative more engaging, like a story. For example, try starting a sentence with, one day, I decided to change my routine. That immediately hooks your listener. Next, let's look at some cultural notes, how routines vary across cultures. In some countries, lunch is the main meal in the middle of the day, while in others, dinner is larger and eaten later. Learning these differences enriches both your language and your cultural understanding. Now, let's answer a listener's question. Maria from Brazil asks, how do I describe a daily meditation practice? Great question, Maria. You can say, I meditate for 10 minutes every morning. Or, I practice mindfulness at the start of my day. Both sound natural and clear. Maria, I hope that helps. And let us know, how do you meditate? And where in Brazil are you listening from? I'd love to know. We're almost at the end of this deep dive. Before we finish, let's recap the core takeaways. Use specific verbs, Wake up, make, commute, wrap up. Add adjectives: fresh, busy, peaceful, energizing. Incorporate time markers and connectors. Practice idioms and phrasal verbs. Use frequency adverbs and transitional phrases. And always add personal touches to your narrative. This toolkit will make your English descriptions richer. Remember to record yourself or chat with a partner. And don't forget, share your routine in the comments. I'll be reading them. Also, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with friends. Thank you for joining me in today's comprehensive episode. I hope you found this deep dive valuable. Keep exploring English in your daily life. Keep practicing. Stay curious and enjoy every routine moment. From me, Peter, thank you and see you next time. Goodbye, everyone, and happy practicing.